think you need to be Usain Bolt to make any money in sports? Not necessarily, but being Bolt doesn't hurt either. So tonight we're going to explore the vast world of sports business and sports investment, how athletes and fans of all levels can make money through sports. So joining us is athlete and brand manager Tanya Perkins, who's going to break down the returns and the risks. Welcome back, Tanya.
Hi, Kalila. Thanks for having me back.
The last time we had you was the World Cup, and it was a very vibrant and interesting discussion. And this time, Jamaicans are tuned in, I want to say even more intensely than the World Cup, because Jamaica is in it.
We do better at track and field, so we get more excited about it.
Absolutely, to see our men and women on the track and on the field, all the glory, and on the podium. Ooh, chills halfway through with your pot cover. So before we get started, though, give us a little bit of background about you for those who are new, who haven't experienced you before, Tanya.
All right, where do I start? The famous question, how did I get started in sports? I am a failed athlete, actually. We're talking about the Olympics. I used to run the 400 meter. I wasn't very good at it. My coach suggested that I change to the 400 meter hurdles, and I stopped at university level. But it granted me scholarships at the university level. I was able to do my master's on the scholarship, so I'm grateful for that. But I've been 20 years in sports media. I joined in 2005 with the Sports Max team as a young marketer and moved all the way up to vice president marketing with the company. I spent 14 years there. And so it's been 20 years in the sports business. I've worked the gamut. You know, I've been a columnist at the Gleaner. I've been a sports author. I've written 2 sports books. I know in my latest chapter, I would say a huge bulk of my time is taken up managing athletes. And I have 2 athletes that are currently on the team for Jamaica at the Olympics, which is Jadon Hibbert, who participates in the triple jump, and Akira Nugent, who has the national record. She did very well at the national championships in the 100 meter hurdles for women. So we're expecting big things in Paris.
All right. Well, congratulations on representing your Olympic athletes, Tanya. I know that's a big deal.
Thank you. Speaking of big deal, Jadon was just signed to KFC, so that's also big money.
And that's what we're going to talk about. All right. So $4.4 billion are projected to be spent on the Paris Olympics. Where does all this money come from?
In terms of the money spent, or?
Yeah, the money invested in the whole thing.
Well, it comes from many different places. Let's start out with who actually owns the rights. So the rights for the Olympic Games belongs to the IOC. And how do they make money? They make money through 2 ways. Largely, primarily through the broadcast rights that they sell to different media companies, and also through sponsorships. So they have some very lucrative sponsorship brands on board. Airbnb, Alibaba, Visa, Deloitte, Samsung, Coca-Cola, just to name a few. Those are big money sponsorships. When you talk about TV broadcast rights, one of the biggest one is NBC Sports. They gave a chunk of $7.7 billion to the IOC for the Olympic rights. And that goes all the way to 2032. And that's just one media house. So that's how they make their money. In terms of who pays for the games to happen, the host country also forks out a significant chunk because they're putting together everything that happens throughout the games. They're hosting all the countries. They have all the stadia ready, the swimming pool, the football fields, all that investment and infrastructure that goes into the Olympics, just like the World Cup, it comes from the host country. So a lot of people are investing heavily in making the product happen.
Who invests in the athletes? Is it just governments, or are there private investors that push for athletes to do well as well? And what return do they get, if so?
I think maybe many of our athletes would laugh at the idea that it's government investment, but largely it's privately funded, and it's funded through their track and field clubs. It's funded through the agents in terms of the athlete's career overall. When you think about the Olympics, it's really not a money-making venture for the athlete per se, but it is the biggest marketing tool for the track and field athletes. Now, let me just break that down. For the first time, persons who win at the Olympics will actually collect the prize money. This is the first time in the history of the games that this will happen. So the winner will go away with $50,000. Outside of that, if you're second, if you're third, you do not make anything at the Olympics. And so that's always been a long-standing issue. But In terms of going to the games itself, that is funded by the National Olympic Association. Of course, the athletes are a part of that camp, so that's taken care of. But they are funded throughout the year by their athletic contracts, which typically they have through ASICS and Nike and Adidas or Puma. Many of our athletes are sponsored by either Nike, Adidas, or Puma, and that's the biggest and most important part of their athletic career, to get that shoe contract.
So the return primarily is the marketing that the sponsors gain from investing in the athletes. There's no financial return per se, except additional exposure, which potentially would result in more people buying your product.
Absolutely. So here's how the matrix works. So what you want to do is you want to get to the Olympics and you want to increase your brand visibility. Now, you want to do that through performing very well, because of course that's going to bring you returns in terms of sponsor interest. So you leave now and you have the opportunity to pick up on sponsorships. Also, you're going to get a more lucrative shoe contract. You're able to renegotiate that contract, or you're able to pick up your contract for the first time. So you have that lucrative shoe contract, which is really your bread and butter. You also want to perform well because you want to be top 10 in the world. What that means is your agent is then able to shop you into meets throughout the year. These are Grand Prix meets, these are Diamond League meets. When you see athletes running on the circuit, they're picking up money for running and participating. They get appearance fees. Now, if you are top 5 in the world, you are gonna likely to get an appearance fee to go to an event. If you're not, it's gonna be very difficult for you to get into those meets. So you're really racing your way into the top 10 in the world. You're grabbing a lane into one of those Grand Prix or Diamond League meets, and you're looking for bonus payouts in case you medal, because a lot of sponsors also pay bonuses. And the shoe contract companies that we spoke about, the Adidas, the Pumas, the Nikes of this world, they're all going to pay out lucrative bonus deals to the athletes for their performances.
When you say lucrative, what type of numbers are we talking about?
Kalilo, I'd probably have to kill you to tell you. The reality is that that's probably the most shrouded thing in track and field. The numbers are not public. It's not like American sports. But I can tell you from my experience that it varies significantly. You're looking anywhere between millions of dollars being made by an athlete per year, or as little as 10,000, funny enough, being made by an athlete per year through an athletic contract. So it varies significantly across the board. So you will have your professional athletes, and then you have your elite athletes, and that elite pool is banking significantly. The others at the professional level, maybe not so much.
How much money does it take to invest in an athlete? Like if I wanted to adopt an athlete and invest in their development, we're talking food, we're talking coaching, we're talking everything it takes to get to the Olympics and do well. Like what type of numbers
are we looking at?
Right.
I don't have those specific numbers, but it's a significant number, which is why it's so expensive to run a track and field club. But then also at the same time, I must tell you that track and field is not the most expensive sport. So you need to have a track, obviously, that you're training on. There's the gym, there's the nutrition aspect of it. But at the end of the day, that is largely done by the track and field clubs, and it's largely covered by the athletes and their athletic contracts that they have with the shoe companies.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, if the track and field clubs are the ones making that investment, how do they make their money back?
It's a combination. So that investment largely starts with the athletic contract. So here's how it works. I'm a young athlete. I'm likely to do well in the sport. I'm probably going to be approached by an agent. He's going to be representing a Nike, a Puma, or an Adidas. He will come to me with an offer on the table. I'm likely, if I'm a good athlete, if I'm running pretty well, if they expect me to do well on the circuit and to medal at the Olympics, I'm likely to get significant monetary offers from these shoe companies. I'm going to choose the one that I think works best for me. There will be some tranches of payouts depending on how well I do. So if I go below a certain threshold in terms of running, if I dip sub 11, if I go sub 10, you may have a significant payout. If I medal, there's a bit bonus that I can pull down on. And that's pretty much how it works. Those contracts then go directly to the athlete through their agents. And then the agents and athletes will pay the coaches. So the coaches then get paid, whether that's on a weekly or a monthly basis. And that fuels the athletic journey. So that's pretty much how it works in the business.
You know, there is a lot of, I've noticed something, Tanya. The ability to get paid in track and field, to get those lucrative marketing contracts, does not only depend on an athlete's performance on the track. It also depends a lot on the way the athlete is able to brand themselves, the way the athlete is able to stand out. To what extent do you agree with that, Tanya, as a marketer yourself?
All right. So the reality is that the single most important thing you must do in the sport is that you have to perform well. It's the reality of the sport because that's what will allow you to maintain that contract that we spoke about. So when you start your career, you get this contract. That figure is reduced, Kalila, if you don't run as fast as is expected. Now that figure goes up exponentially if you are doing well in the sport. So if you're running well, if you have big social media numbers, if you have massive visibility, if you become a household name, if you have big personality, you're gonna bank. Sports is entertainment, and it's a business where if you invest in your brand and in the product, you're gonna get the returns. So what you'll find is that there are many people who are running track and field. There are many people who are in a swimming pool. There are many people who are diving. There are many people who are doing judo, whatever the sport is. But what really separates people is the big personality, the huge athletic performance. This is now when you're in that elite athlete territory. So when you think about something like the NBA, look at LeBron James. He's an elite athlete. He's gonna bank much more. As Steph Curry is gonna get much more lucrative deals than the fifth man or the sixth man on a basketball team. It's the same thing in track and field. If you're top five in the world, if you have a big personality, if you're consistent, if you medal, you're likely to pick up more money through endorsements and sponsorship.
So when you think about Usain Bolt, he's top athlete, but also he differentiates himself with the lightning bolt pose, his personality. You think about Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price with her signature hair, all the wigs that she takes to, to the games and so on.
Absolutely. So even my job as an athlete manager, that's one of the things that I look at, and that's the reason why I would have signed an athlete like a Jaden Hibbert because he has a big personality. When I think about it, and even him being picked up by KFC as the first track and field brand ambassador in Jamaica to represent KFC, which is a huge global brand, that's testament to the personality that he has. Because Kalila, this is not a sprinter. This is a field event athlete. So your personality will sell. It will take you places. And I think Bolt is the epitome of that. He epitomized big personality, showmanship. When the lights come on, he comes alive. And I think that's what brands are looking for.
Do you think Bolt should be bigger than he is today? Financial. Well, I don't know
Bolt
what
is,
his finances are like, but in terms of global brand deals, should he be bigger?
again, the secret is shorted in track and field. I think Bolt is pretty big, Kalilo. Bolt has made significant monies. He's had a number of deals. I think if you pay attention to his social media, you will see that he very quietly amasses a lot of brand deals, a lot of advertising, and I don't know what the figures look like, but I think he's done pretty good for himself over the years. I think he has.
What about an athlete like a Shelly-Ann? Because we all know the women get the shorter end of the stick when it comes to sports, any sport.
Well, for Shelley, she would have had some sponsorship throughout the years. If you look at it, even in Jamaica, her sponsorship with Digicel and Grace Kennedy started at the start of her career and it's still going. Shelley has had longevity throughout the sport. I know that recently she was picked up by the watch company Hublot.
Right, I saw that, yes.
Right. So that's also pretty good. No, we don't know what those numbers look like, but I think she's also done pretty well for herself. And of course, her shoe contract with Nike, she's had those contracts with Nike for, I mean, it dates back to, I believe, 2008, if I'm correct. So she would have amassed enough as well throughout her career. And you know, Kalila, that when you're in sports, to me, it doesn't matter what sport you're doing. You're investing in the rest of your life. So any money you make that goes into real estate, it goes into your investments. You want to make sure that you are making that money work for you, even while you're participating in sports.
I have a question from Sean who wants to know, do athletes just practice every day or do they have to go out and get a job to support themselves? Or is it all on the person investing in them?
Very interesting question, Sean. All right, so here's the reality. There's no one size fits all in track and field. The reality is most athletes don't have a day job. The rigors, the number of training that you do, some will train twice a day. It depends on the time of year and the background training. You also have to travel to participate in meets. It's not possible for you to have a 9 to 5. And so even what you find is that funding becomes very important to some of those athletes who are not on the receiving end of these huge lucrative athletic contracts that we spoke about. But it's not possible for many of them to have a 9 to 5.
But what about the off season then? Because you have your
There's
training
there's
leading up to.
there's no such thing as an off season track and field. The reality is they're gonna run. So when they get to the Olympics in August, they're gonna be and July, they're gonna be running at the Olympics. Right after they're done with that, they're gonna go onto the Diamond League circuit. You're now going to pick up races right throughout until the end of September. You'll find that track and field meets are happening. And then they get like a 2-week break, maybe not so much, and they're back into background training in October to prepare for the next track and field season. It really is year round. It's brutal. It's hard on the athletes. And that's why the support, the encouragement is so important, because it's a 24/7, 365.
You also know a lot about sports media, having worked at Sportsmax, like you said, for 15 years, participated in those meetings where you all bought rights for all kind of stuff. How lucrative is that side of it?
That's the most lucrative side. It is the broadcast rights is probably the most lucrative side for, let's say, the IOC. It's the same for the World Cup. FIFA would make significant monies from broadcast rights. In terms of the media houses, it's going to be dependent on their ability to sell advertising. But when you think about it, so this year, if you talk to any brands, most of the top brands, their budgets would have gone towards something like the Olympics. In 2026, it's going to go towards the World Cup. They know that this is a huge global audience. 3 billion people are going to tune in to the Olympics. So when we start on Friday until August 11, everything media-wise is going to be surrounding the Olympics game. It's the perfect time for ICE to go on a product. They are aware of that. And so they will spend big bucks on that broadcast rights and in terms of the advertising. So that's where most of the money is made.
But I know those broadcast rights are very, very expensive. Is it profitable to invest in that in Jamaica? Like, do the platforms make back their money?
I think they do. I mean, you can have a conversation with the likes of Nicholas Matthews at Sportsmax. I mean, they own the rights to the Olympics throughout the Caribbean. And it will be lucrative because you're looking at multiple markets throughout the region. For Jamaica, you're going to pick up the biggest chunk of that payout because of the fact that we do best at it. So you'll find that we'll bring the biggest audiences. In terms of selling as well, you sell based on the population size, Jamaica being one of the largest of the Caribbean territories. So that's where you're going to pick up a significant chunk of what you've spent on those broadcast rights, because now you're unselling those rights to other media houses. So just to give an idea, Sportsmax is now going to unsell those rights in Jamaica to a TVJ. TVJ would be able to bring it to over 90% of the population, which is a stipulation of the IOC. They have to ensure that it doesn't sit within a cable channel. It sits within a free-to-air channel where everybody is able to watch the Olympics and they're able to watch it free. So those are important aspects. And of course, they're doing this right across the region. So they're looking for deals in Trinidad, Barbados. They're going to, all the rest of the Caribbean to shop those rights. It's a lucrative business. That's where the revenues come in.
What about team sports? Do you represent any athletes in team sports like, say, football?
Absolutely, I do. Jamaica's captain and vice captain for the Reggae Boys, as examples.
So you're going straight for the top, captain and vice captain.
They're going to be picked every time, Kalila. Absolutely. It's important because that's also in team sports, you want to make sure that the athletes that you choose, I mean, not to give away all my trade secrets, but you want to ensure that they're actually a part of the play. That's important because then you have more opportunities to build a brand. Then that's what sponsors need as well. And they want to know that once they get onto that pitch, that they're going to have visibility for their brands. They're able to do messaging and communications around them, that once they're part of their advertising campaign, their social media campaign, the digital ads, the billboards, that they're recognizable faces. So yes, I'm going for the captain and the vice captain.
Mm-hmm. But I know in other countries like owning a team, owning a sports team is a big thing. Teams are, and even players, traded, bought and sold, quote unquote. It
Yes.
money part is a big part of it.
Yes, it's important. I mean, if you're talking about sports teams, that's where the money is made. That's massive. When you think about a brand like Manchester United, for example, and by the way, that's a company that people can buy into. They make significant sums from jersey sales. You want to have the world's top athletes playing on your team because you see the returns that happens in terms of merchandising and jersey sales and in terms of ticket sales. A big example of that recently was Messi joining Inter Miami. Before then, Inter Miami was a team that was struggling in the MLS. Messi gets there and it becomes a circus. Tickets are sold out for every fixture that Inter Miami is a part of. Everybody's benefiting along the chain. Apple TV subscriptions gone through the roof. And jersey sales, those go off the shelf for Adidas immediately. They're sold out in record time. So it's a huge investment to get the right players in. And once you do, that team is banking heavily in terms of merchandising and ticket sales. And in terms of course, once they get in there, when you go to one of these matches, you realize that people are buying the jerseys on the spot. And of course, food. So it's a huge investment. Yes, but the returns are there definitely for the sports team.
I remember some months ago, I saw an article in one of the papers about a possible football IPO. So getting a couple, one or a few of Jamaica's Premier League football teams to actually list on the stock exchange. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I'm not sure if we're there yet. I think that football is still sort of semi-professional in Jamaica. I think there are still huge areas for development. We need to have more investment actually in the infrastructure in Jamaica. We don't have a football stadium, Kalilo. We don't have the right football fields. I think that we're still far away from that, and we are still in the, I would say, embryonic developmental stages with what we're doing with our football. And so my suggestion would be that we continue to grow. But in terms of commercial viability, I'm not sure we're completely there yet. We're certainly not at the level that of the leagues that we just discussed. We're certainly not at the level of the MLS. We're not at the level of an English Premier League. I do think that the work that the PSJL and Chris Williams and team has done has been yeoman's work. It has been great in terms of being able to get sponsorships for each of those clubs, in terms of being able to get record attendance at the matches. I mean, I was at the finals and it was an electrifying atmosphere. And certainly much more fans were coming through than we get for the Reggae Boys at the national level. So I think that's testament to the hard work that they are doing, but I think there's more work to be done. Chris would better be able to share some of those numbers, but from where I stand and what I've seen, I'm not quite sure we're there yet.
Yeah, the article actually did quote Chris as being the one who made that proposal. Let me take a few questions from the audience before we wrap, Tanya. So we have, let me see, who do we have here? Nano Sense is all up in your business. He wants to know, how much commission do you charge an athlete?
I actually never made figures public.
Okay. Lanesra wants to know, have you approached Brianna Liston to represent her when she becomes pro?
I haven't. I don't typically approach athletes, they approach me.
Ashton wants to know, what is the average range of income over an athlete's active years, say 10 years?
It varies. It depends on the athlete. So like I mentioned before, in any sport, this is not just track and field. What you find is depending on the athlete, whether they're an elite athlete, it depends on which country they're in. I'm going to use an example. If you look at the Sha'Carri Richards, you would have seen that she has a number of deals, and almost every day, if you watch her social media, she has a new sponsor. And that's because, of course, she's in the US market. It's a hugely lucrative market, and there are lots more opportunities that will be available to her because she's doing well now. So I think there's so many things that come at play. What country you reside in, who you represent, how well do you perform, what kind of personality do you have? Are you engaging? Do you have a huge social media following? Those are some of the things. Are you risky or not risky? Are you safe? That's important for brands as well. So I think there's so many things that go into how much the athlete actually is able to earn. There is no one size fits all.
Next question comes from KNB on Instagram, who wants to know, why are the contracts in track and field such a secret in comparison with other sports?
Uh, uh, I don't. Is this in comparison with other sports? I'm not so sure, but I will say I think the reason it is so secretive is the same reason that your salary at the place that you work is so secretive. Maybe they can pay you less if you don't know what the other person is earning. Let me put it like that.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to the games when they get started on Friday. We'll all be tuned in. As a manager, you're in Jamaica. I thought you would be in Paris. No? How that work?
No, I'm actually, well, a part of what I do is, and see, this is how others are benefiting along the chain as well. So I work alongside Team Jamaica to make sure that we're getting out the content for the fans and everybody who follows Team Jamaica on social media. We do have sponsors on board, so want to make sure that we cover everything that is being done. So I'm going to be working right throughout. Also, in terms of the athletes that I'm working with, we've already, put together our brand plan because we intend to have significant visibility throughout the games. So we're going to engage with fans and build on the brands and ensure that when the Olympics is done, we're able to cash in even more because we'll have higher social media numbers. And also, I'll be a part of the broadcast team for CVM's coverage. So I have a number of things that are happening here that makes it, I think, more useful for me to actually be in Jamaica during the Olympics.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Tanya. We look forward to everything.
Thanks, Kalilo. Thank you.